Now, what we've also been doing is, because Komal works with so many small growers, we've been talking to the growers and we've asked them to come to us when they see any anomalies in their plants. And we've actually come across hybrids of Arabica and Excelsa.
Naturally occurring?
Naturally occurring.
Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and we are talking really great nerdy stuff about coffee varieties and coffee species and future-proofing coffee production. And we are joined by Komal and Akshay, and we're going to continue the conversation that we were having from the last episode about the preferred species for future-proofing coffee production. So, Akshay, carry on with what you were saying about in the last episode about that.
So now here's the thing. So now we're looking at, with selection 11 and 4595 that Indian Coffee Board has come up with, we're looking at Arabica type of species, right? So this is fantastic for a 5 or 10 year plan. Now, when a new species or a variety is put on the market, it needs at least 15 to 20 years of research before it goes out, because you have growers worth from, half an acre right up to a few thousand acres who are going to be planting these species or varieties. Now, which is also the case with our Excelsa projects, right? So we are studying the Excelsas on our own farms. So we are getting an idea of how it works before we start actually. I mean, we've done 10,000 saplings this year. So coming back to species and which species and varieties. So we've got to look at short term, long term, medium term, and long term. In the short term, we've got at least in India, we've got access to selection 11. We're going to get access to 4595. There is, however, an issue, right? Planting single varietals is always a risk, because you have one pest or one sort of fungi that affects that one varietal and can wipe out your entire crop. So it's always good to hedge. It's always good to split. It's always good to have a few different options.
Folks, our first on-demand workshop, How to Become a Coffee Consultant, is now available for you to learn at your own pace for just €50, and it comes with a certificate upon completion. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for more details. Support this podcast by supporting our sponsors.
Now, what we've also been doing is, because Komal works with so many small growers, we've been talking to the growers and we've asked them to come to us when they see any anomalies in their plants. And we've actually come across hybrids of Arabica and Excelsa.
Naturally occurring?
Naturally occurring. Now, here's the thing. When you end up having a hybrid between, I'm going to go a little technical. When you have a tetraploid like Arabica and hybridizing with a diploid like Excelsa, now, naturally, the only known tetraploid at the moment in coffee is basically Arabica. Now, when you have a tetraploid crossing with a diploid, you end up usually having a sterile triploid. Very rarely do you end up having another tetraploid, which means a tetraploid is fully compatible with Arabica. So what we always look for is another tetraploid which can basically match with Arabica for breeding purposes, which is why HDT was so fantastic. In India, we had something similar happen called the Dave Machi variety, but we didn't really market it well enough. So HDT is now the gold standard. Now, now, why is HDT important? Is because some of Robusta's leaf rust resistant genes have come into an Arabica hybrid and it's tetraploid. Therefore, it's crossable with Arabica.
Right. Now, so just a second, I just want to interpret a little bit of that for some of the folks who don't have the genetic speak that we have. The reason this is so important, folks, is because if you have a plant that crosses with something else and then it ends up sterile, what that means is it's not going to produce any more fruit. It's not going to continue to proliferate and produce more coffee for the producer. So therefore, it becomes a real problem for people who are trying to make money out of making coffee or producing coffee. We're trying to achieve the opposite if we're looking for sustainable farming practices. We're trying to have plants that are reproducing with other plants that will give us a higher yield, which is what the race is at the moment, which is how can we get plants that are fruiting as much as possible to create a larger yield of coffee without being as taxing on the environment around them. So they don't take up too much water, they don't suck up too much nutrients from the ground, they don't require so much labor. The more resource intensive a plant is, the less profitability there is in it, but also the higher the yield is with lower inputs, the more profitable it is. And so if we end up accidentally having a plant that is reproducing with another plant that causes it to become sterile, that's just the same kind of problem as having coffee leaf rust, because the plant ends up being useless at the end of that. So you end up having to get rid of it, I suspect, somehow, right, guys?
Yep. I mean, the thing is, it's just removed, right? It's removed part of agriculture practice. Something's not yielding. Now, our main focus on why we're looking at this is because if we find a stable, now when you say stable, that means the progeny of that plant is similar year on year and has the characteristics of the parent. Mm-hmm. And what characteristics we are looking for is some of the characteristics of Excelsa, if it's come into the Arabica, so it becomes a tetraploid, potentially the deeper rooting system. So yes, Arabica is deeper than Robusta, but it's not deep enough. And some of the temperature resistance of Excelsa, if it's come into the Arabica, it makes it fantastic and it would be great for future breeding purposes, right? Now, so yes, so that's another shorter term goal. Then we're also, what we also have to start looking at is potentially grafting solutions. Now, yes, Robusta is not drought resistant, but you can bring in a degree of drought resistance by grafting Robusta onto, let's say, an Excelsa rootstock.
Explain what grafting is before you go any further, for those who don't know what grafting is.
So you cut a new shoot, and you take the rootstock of another plant, a sapling, and they both need to be similar sizes. A sapling of, let's say in this scenario, you take a new shoot of Robusta, you take a new sapling of Excelsa or Liberica, potentially Racemosa, because you've noticed it's deeper rooting as well. So you can take any of these rootstocks. You need to cut that and join the two. I can go into detail if necessary.
No,
I can
go ahead.
I'll give you this thing. So basically, with grafting, you can always have a look at some of the stuff that we're doing online. So you have lots of tutorials. We're doing all of this kind of information on our Instagram channel. So if somebody doesn't know what grafting is and wants to learn about it, you just head over and you'll learn a little bit more over there as well.
Yeah. And basically, folks, it's like you would just basically slit the skin. To put it in very basic terms, you slit the skin, you kind of create a little pocket, and you slide the shoot in that way. And then what happens is, again?
And then you tape it up and you're good.
And then they kind of become one. Somehow they become one to make it very... I'm a songwriter, so can you tell? So they become one, and then as the rootstock grows, the new shoot grows with it. And this is done because of a lot of reasons. Why don't you guys tell us why grafting is so important?
Essentially, it's a type of clonal propagation. It's not fully clonal because let's say you have a certain plant that's high yielding and you want to duplicate this plant. You take new shoots of this plant and you can graft it on rootstocks.
Right.
Now, and you can deploy a high yielding block, but again, genetically they're very similar. Now, it's always been thought that grafting retains the original characteristics of the parent, but I think latest research shows that there is some cell transfer happening between the root and the scion. The scion is the top part of the plant. Right. So that's another can of worms. We won't go there. However, just now, Hawaii has been grafting Arabica onto Excelsa or Liberica for years to solve a nematode issue they have in the soil.
Okay.
However, they've got tetraploid, which is Arabica on top, diploid Excelsa at the bottom. There may be issues, there may not be issues. Because there is some sort of mismatch there. but it works. We've been doing Arabicas onto Robustas, Robustas onto Arabicas. At least in the short term, it's been working. However, it's always better to do deployed on deployed just to be safe. Again, a lot of this information is not enough for us to have a solid opinion about. But to reduce your dependence on water for your Robusta, you can always graft it onto Excelsa. Theoretically, it is safe, but if it doesn't, don't come back to me.
There's a disclaimer.
But so what we're doing was we've got a little species garden. We've got several different species crosses. So we've been experimenting. We've done experiments of Eugenioides on Excelsa. We're doing experiments of Robusta on actually, this is a big experiment. We're doing about 10,000 Robustas on Excelsas, and then we're going to see what happens.
And
right?
all of that's grafted?
Yes, that's all
the
grafted.
labor must be wildly expensive.
But here's the thing, right? If we don't do it now, it's going to be too late in the future.
Right. And this is where we come to future-proofing, right? Like, there's not enough research. It's time and the rate that everything's changing is outpacing the rate at which we can research and develop new options.
It takes time. Yes, it takes time. See, the feedback loops aren't like in the tech world where it's like in 30 seconds I've deployed and I'm seeing what's happening. No.
Right.
The feedback loops is minimum 10 to 15 years. I mean, you get the first feedback in 3 to 5 years, and then second and third and fourth.
Yeah.
And if you don't start doing it, we're probably already too late.
Yep. Why isn't there more conversation happening about this stuff?
Because now Robusta is considered to be an easy way out.
But you're saying that it's not. You're clearly stating it's not.
Well, because look at it this way, right? My current water consumption is based on my Arabica production. If I'm an Arabica farm and I move to Robusta and Robusta needs more water, I really don't know how much more water is going to need.
Especially when there's a drought.
Yes, and I don't. And with climate change, for example, our monsoons are completely haywire. Usually, we should have had about 40 inches or 50 inches of rain. Right now, we've had 30. We're 20 inches short. It's hot. It's like summer. It's 29 degrees out there. This is our planting period, and we can't plant.
Right.
So, I mean, do we know where? Can all of us be so sure that I'm going to have enough water for the rest of my life? No, we can't.
No. And this is where we start, dare I say, here's a segue. This is where we start to have to look at tech for solutions that may help us speed up the process that we're trying to develop, the agricultural side of things. And this leads us perfectly into the last episode of our series, which is all about technology and what role it's going to play, particularly AI, I think, what role tech and AI are going to play in future-proofing the production of coffee. And I suspect that there are a lot of people around the world that are very interested in this, but having no idea how they're going to incorporate technology into coffee production. Because typically we think that tech is all about equipment and computers and all that kind of stuff, but technology can be anything. Like fire was technology at one point before it was something that people were using. Something that we're also going to talk about in the next episode. I hope we may not, but a part of the role that technology is going to play is also in energy transition. So we may get to it. I hope we get to it. Join us for the next episode, folks. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in, friends. There are 2 ways you can support this podcast. Firstly, become a paid member of our YouTube channel. Secondly, you can join our Patreon for as little as $3 a month. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video before you leave, and check the show notes for more information. Now, this is what you should check out next.